I didn't want to go to the Army, and the draft board was coming down my back. So about a week before I was supposed to sign up for the service, the draft, I went down and joined the Navy. In the meantime, my brother had been joined the Navy, and he was over in Beirut, Lebanon. And he wrote a letter. He says, if you get a chance, join the Navy. So when I went down to the recruiting office, I was about a week before I was supposed to be drafted, went down and joined the Navy, and they said, okay, we swore me in. As I was sworn in, they said, we'll call you. You're officially in the Navy, but you're in the reserve now. So that was in November of '42, about 11 months after Pearl Harbor. So I didn't hear anything until about April of '43. I get a notice that says, report down to the Pittsburgh recruiting station, and you'll be activated into the U.S. Navy. So I went down, reported, and I left about the 15th of April to go to Camp Perry, Virginia. And we went down there in a group, and I didn't know one thing from another, a bunch of recruits coming out, and the first thing I heard, you'll be sorry. Somebody shouting out in the yard, because the people had been there. We get our barracks, we get our clothes, get everything thrown in a bundle. I was assigned to a barracks, went to the barracks, and then we started. And the first thing you know, why, the officer comes in and he starts instructing us what's going to happen. And then he says, tomorrow morning at 0600, you'll hear reveille. I want you out in the field. We're going to do PT. So we went out next morning. They come on and checked everybody. And the guy says, what happened to the fellows underneath your bunk? I said, I don't know. He had gone over the hill the night before. He couldn't stand to hack the system. So we had to start marching different groups, and were assigned us to we were in Company B, and our unit was B6. All these fellows were in there. They come from different parts of the country. They were all construction people. I didn't know that at the time. I thought because I had gone to school at Conley Trade as a sheet metal and welding school, and when I got a job at a factory in Homewood, I had been doing light brazing and things when I put on my application. So when I got into the service, I was assigned to B6 company. So anyhow, as we progressed as a different thing, we were placed in different groups. And the first thing you know, we got a 30-day, we did basic training. We got our shots and everything. We were allowed to go home for 30 days. We came back, and by November, we went into, came back, we went into advanced training, which was training to be using the rifles and the machine guns, 30 caliber, 50 caliber machine guns, things of that like. And some people were assigned to a BAR move, but we just had our regular carbine rifles. And we were took out the rifle range, and I had become qualified as a sharpshooter at that time. And I got so sick one time, I was so laying on the ground out there being a target practice, that I just got overcome with the heat. So I went back to the barracks, and the next day I was okay again. But as we went, progressed to our advanced training, what have you, by November of '43, we were on our way to Hawaii. So we get to Hawaii, and we were all signed to this Company B, 95th Battalion of Seabees. There was a bunch of every walk of life of trades you could have were in that. So we left Hawaii and went to the Gilbert Islands, which was an island named Apamama. Like I said, we didn't know all this stuff. We found out these guys were working on a tank farm. There's some pictures in that cruise magazine that shows the tank farm, how it's being built. It was all plate steel and the gaskets in between, all bolted together. And that's how they made those figures. Then they'd pipe the from the tanker ships. They'd pipe it from the ship. They built a pipe, welded pipe, and float it out to the ship. Put a flexible line on it, pump it out of the ship, and then pump it back into the shore into these tank farms. That's how they held their oil. Sometimes they had gasoline drums, but how many gasoline drums can you carry back and forth? So it was easier for them to make the pipeline and get that going, and no problem, because you had always a chance of bringing another tanker in and fill up the tanks with them with the oil from the floating units out in the bay, because that was where the boys were to keep the pipe above the seawater. So that's how that was all done. And then other people had built it. We had the bakers, the cooks, had the people also making the sick bay. There's always somebody getting sick. They had the doctor's quarters and the corpsman's quarters, and to do that, they had a dentist office there. So all these had to be built. All these buildings had to be built. The first thing they had to do when you got to that island, you had to get water. So they brought these distillation units in and set them up and piped salt water into those distillation units. When that got water, they had these big leather lister bags, like they had years ago in the Bible, and they had little spigots on them. And when you got water out of it, it was like drinking hot water. It was so hot, but it was purified. It was fresh water. And we had no chance of taking showers with that, because that was just for drinking purpose and cooking. So that's how they made their fresh water. That was the first priority, was to get fresh water, because if you left your ship with an empty canteen, that was like losing your rifle. That was so important to do that. So as we had merged on to different projects, we were told this project needed a council hut over here. We might have built that council hut, went on to the next one. We never saw anybody else around where we were working, because they were all in different parts of the island working different projects. It was like until you get back in the camp, and he said, "Where was you all day? We were doing this, we were doing that." And then you had the people working for the communication, the electricians, the carpenters had their own shop, the welders have their own shop, things like that. It was all very laid out, very meticulously to get this project all done. And that's how they went from island to island. After we spent so many weeks there, we were so advanced, we went on to the Marshalls, the Roy and the Moore. We got up there, and that place was like blown to bits. Big 16 shells, you could see where a hole went right through the wall of a concrete building, and that's all it was, just a big hole in there, like somebody bored a hole in it. It was a concrete shell, that the shell went through it, bored a hole right in that concrete. But they were all reinforced concrete. I remember getting on the job, and the lieutenant says, "You ever run a jackhammer?" I said, "No." He said, "Here, try this one." I just pumped it like I knew all the time how to do it, because it was all run by compressed air. You just pumped it to break that concrete up to make some kind of structure was in your way. You had to break it up. Then the bulldozers would come in, move it out, take pieces like that, and clear out the area. So that's how we ended up. Then we got to the point where they had to put the airfields on. they had to do the parachute loft because the parachutes all had to be dried. So once they were used, they had to be stretched out and put in the parachute loft to dry out. So the building we worked on, I worked with a fellow at McKeesport. He was a steel worker, and he took me under his hand because I was just a young kid, 20 years old, and he said, "Hey Clancy, come with me." He showed me a spud wrench. He said, "When I get up here, you put that spud wrench into the hole and put one bolt in there and tighten it up as tight as you can and let me know when it's done." I did that, told him the same thing. We kept going up higher and higher, but there was a crew coming back to us, behind us, that would turn around and finish up all the bolts that was bolted, needed to be bolted in there. And we got 100 foot in the air, and as we're up in the air looking out of the structure, we see these planes coming in. They're landing on the landing strip, and they're pretty well shot up. One plane hit the airstrip, and he run right into the hangar, airport hangar, and his must have blew out a flat tire, or his wing was shot up because you just see him crash in there. But all the fire people went over there and helped to douse the fire, any flames, but he was okay. I had medical problems because I had some kind of stomach problem. Well, they put me in the hospital, and I was in there for about a week or so. In the meantime, our unit was refitted with everything's going on, all new equipment, and they were heading out to Iwo, which I didn't know at the time. So I was still in the hospital. The unit left. I was still in the hospital. About a month later, after I was released from the hospital, I was put on a ship on a freighter, and we had to stop at different islands to drop some supplies off. And I got about a month or so later, I joined up the group on Iwo Jima. And from that time on, some of our fellows were truck drivers who used to carry ammunition with the trucks to the front lines. And like I always thought, from the time you get there, you think you're safe, but you have all these other fellows that doing a worse job than what you got. You went through the air raids, but they were out in the front line taking ammunition and things up there. So some of these fellows were very fortunate, and we were very fortunate. I think we only had about 6 or 8 people injured, and one person really got deceased on the airfield because he was hiding behind a bulldozer when a plane dropped a bomb down and got him. Another job we did was the command post. That was made about 3/16 corrugated steel. That was all bolted together. And one time then they buried it into the island, and what they did, they covered it all over with sand, what they had on the island. And one time they got so much rain that it flooded them out, so we had to go over and pump that out. That was one of our projects too to do. But wherever they told us to do, that was our job. And if we didn't do that, we were supposed to meet at the detail office, and if we didn't report down there, the lieutenant would come up and he said, "What's happening to everybody?" I said, "Well, a tent blew in last night. It went up, the canvas tent went up, the pole went down, it went between the guy's legs, and the whole tent collapsed." And he come up and he said, "Oh, you had a little problem." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, have a couple guys stay here. The rest of you come down. We got to pump out the commander's office." So that's some of the things that went on there. But whenever I saw these fellows leaving, would have had enough points because, like I said, when I got in there about June or July, and they were leaving in September, because that's when we were closing up to come home, I thought, boy, seeing these string of guys going fellows I lived with for 4 years. It was just emotional to see them go, and you're still there. It just took the strength right out of me. But I had a cake job after they left because some SeaBee units, base maintenance units, they were very easy to do. You had no authority whatsoever to anybody was breathing down your back to do that. We almost lived like hermits because we could go topless in anything you want to do, but make sure you had your rifle handy anytime you were out somewhere. That was some of the things we experienced in our tour of duty at that time. Oh, we used to have reunions come back to our house after we come out of the service. This fellow from McKeesport, John Carlson, he was a good steel worker. Like they took me under their wing to know how to do this stuff. And we used to come back and have reunions at our home. And then we went up to a guy who was a refrigeration unit guy. And he went up to Boston, Mass. And we had a reunion up there. We had reunions at Lancaster. We had reunions at Philadelphia. And it had different places we had. We enjoyed their different companies. And we'd meet these people. Whoever could meet that, we had them there. The people from their area, because there was a lot of people from New England come down there and were in the Seabees. But they were like one was a refrigeration man. One guy was a painter. Another guy was a mailman. They all had different things that they were skilled at. And I was just a young punk kid and learning from all these guys that we went to. But my father and I, when we growed up, I had 2 brothers, and we always used to work as a team after dinner. We go down in the yard. My dad used to take all the nails and screws out of this wood that my brother used to bring home from gimbals. He worked with gimbals, the display cases. He'd bring them home. My father said, if your mother ever gets a nail or a finger in her fingers, it's going to be your bet. And he used to take all them screws out, all them nails out. And at that time, the Depression was on. Nobody had anything. So we all saved and saved and saved. He saved screws. I guess I maybe have screws today that he still saved. The nails and that, he still saved. But we had little boxes. We used to save that stuff because nobody had anything to do. And we saved, my dad palletized all this wood. And my neighbors, he's going to put a fence on. My dad said, what are you going to do with that? We're going to get lumber. He said, I'm going to get down there. He says, wait a minute. He goes under the porch. He said, Joe, get that lumber out of there. He had all palletized. He gave it to my neighbor. Must have been 50 foot long on both sides of the yard to put all those palings up. That he just saved and saved and saved. Someday we needed it because we all had wood fires. We had no furnaces in them days. We all had wood fires, and we used to buy coal and put in coal. I used to put coal in for a guy who worked. I worked in a A&P store. I delivered papers. I'd cut grass on the side. Just for make a couple of bucks. We needed money. There was no money in them days. You say about going to the movies. It was a treat to go to a movie. But driving, I didn't have a car. I said to my father, I like to eat cars. Get a job. Get a job. That was my bringing up. So that was some of the things but a lot of these fellows, they all had gone and passed on. But I see today when these fellows come home from the service, you're living with these guys, that's your family, for four years or more. And they come home, there's nobody. And they come out, they lost everybody. And I used to come home and I think, boy, where's everybody gone? I couldn't accept all the things that changed since I had gone away. And I used to get nightmares when the mill at Southside, J. Nails down there, that the big shear used to pump shear stuff off during the night. I'd be laying in bed, I'd hear that big boom, boom. I used to get nightmares from doing that. But I overcome them, you know. But I had 2 brothers in the Navy and myself, so we all survived very, very good. We were very, very well blessed with Hickey. But we went through air raids and things like that. We were known to build our foxhole. We had built our foxhole right inside the tent. So we had a place to get in, and everything we needed, we procured. We didn't steal anything, we procured it. And we used to have peanut butter and jelly, gallons of that stuff inside our foxhole. We had a lot of good people that they were all good, friendly people, and we had a lot of reunions, different places, and we had local reunions with our friends from the Pittsburgh area. So that was some of the nice things we had got, and I still, as I see these people, and even their children would send us Christmas cards and say they had passed away, that we were so happy that we were friends of theirs and their mother and things like that. But most of them have pretty well gone because they were a lot older than I was, because I was just a punk kid at 20 years old, and they were well established, 29, 30 years old, and they were real mechanics and millwrights and things like that. But they're all going on, and I'm, like I said, at my age now, I'm one of the few, I guess, survivors that is able to talk about this and say, hey, we were really blessed with Hickey. But there was a good group of people that we had, these people. And like I said, you didn't see one of them guys from the day you got in there, from the day you left your tent in the morning till they come back, and the next time you would pass through the tent to the barracks, or the tents, because you never saw them. They went on their job, and we had to do our job. That's what we were trained to do. And since I learned how to do a lot of these stuff, I learned from the guys that were in the service, they just took me under the wing and enjoyed their company. They put me into, I went to welding school in the service. What they did, they had a theory that was no on-hand stuff. It was just theory, you know. And all these fellows from all over the country there, they were just so well older than I was. They had been in different factories and different projects, and maybe fields that they worked on, different projects and building trades, and that they really enjoyed what they did, and they just passed it on to us, you know. And they'd go down and weld that pipeline up, have it set up, and they used to talk about it in the shop, in the theory, and go about that. And then they'd tell you about the things they used to do when you get back to camp. They'd talk about where they did this and where they was back at their job in the civilian life, what they did then. It was just one of them things that you just learned and picked up. And I sort of picked everybody's brain, that I could see what they were doing and watch what they're doing. Because if you fouled up, they put you on the cement detail, and that was hand jobs. There was no mechanical stuff. It was all mixed by hand and stuff. That was instead of putting you in a brig, they put you to work on the cement detail. That's some of the things you watched out for. But some of the officers were very well done. They were just 90-day wonders like myself, you know. They were just learning to be an officer. I mean, maybe they were an executive somewhere else, but to handle all these different types of people, all different ages of people, they had to be a little human, for God's sake, you know. And I can say a lot of things that you thought to yourself, boy, I never saw that guy do that like at home, back home, when we worked at a factory. You did this done or else you get fired. Here you just couldn't get fired. You just had to do what you were told, and that was it. That's what we were taught to do. Do what you're told. But like I said, my father and my brothers all worked together as a team. And when we had, after dinner, like I said, we were down in the yard, did something there needed to be done. We built our own shed with a little 6-inch hand saw, a power saw, you know, and it built a Hickey. And my dad says, I want to be able to look out this kitchen window and see over that shed roof. And we worked on that, made all our own windows from that shed. It was all stuff made, and I watched how it was done. So we were pretty well mechanically inclined, because my other brothers had gone to a trade school, and they had known what to do. So I was very fortunate, and my father was very, very good at making things too. I remember him making our own screens for the double hung windows, you know, things like that. And he put his own hinges on, things like that, put his own screens on, painted it all up. And I helped him, you know, told me what to do, and I did what it was told. It was all discipline them days. I don't see that today. That's the sad part about it. I see all these guys, they don't have nothing to do. I used to go down to the library at times if I was out somewhere and pick up a book and see what I could find in a book somewhere. But that was my period way, because, like I said, there was nobody to run around with crowds and groups of people. You just stayed home and listened to the headset, a radio, or a boxing match or something like that, because, like I said, it was all Depression time, and nobody had anything. That was it, you know. I came out, I went into Seaman first class, and I came out to ship fitter second class.
A ship fitter?
Yes, sir.
And what is a ship fitter exactly?
Well, it's you take care of all the maintenance on the ship, but we were never on the ship. It was all things like in the island, the way it was done here, these different projects need to be done on the island, because whenever what we came from is years ago when the islands were being invaded by the Japanese. They had all these contractors on the islands, and they were building the islands up and doing their projects. But when the Japanese took over, they didn't know how to fight. They had no rifles or anything, so they were got the idea. Admiral Ben Morrell got the idea to train Seabees that could fight and build at the same time, if there need to be. So the main projects would get these for every veteran combat troop, you had to have about 5 or 7 guys as a backup. You had the cooks, the bakers, to furnish the ammunition to bring the supplies up to the front. When Patton, he was going so fast, they couldn't supply the stuff so fast, they couldn't keep up with them, because they had all these trucks flying behind him with all the supplies to keep up, so he could keep his momentum going. And the same thing with Ben Morrell, when he found all about this, and that's where they come up with the idea of building Navy, Seabees, and the construction battalions. That's what they called them. And there's some literature there that I had brought along that shows that how they started that up. It was very, very interesting, but it was nice that they do that. Even to this day, they still do it. In Iraq, they had them over there. They have them in Afghanistan, they have them over there. They still have Seabees units down there. They have SeaBee Museum. They got a SeaBee Memorial up in Washington. They got a SeaBee Museum in Mississippi. They got one in I think it's Port Hueneme on the West Coast. So they have a very background of this group of people, SeaBee construction battalions. When you're with those fellows, every one of those fellows is your backup. He's going to save you as well as you're going to save him. That's the way you're trained. It was discipline, and we were taught to survive on different plants and things in the service and things like that. But most of our time was with the coconut trees and that they had a lot of coconut, and the natives would be making this taro plant that they growed into swamps like that. But there was a terrific amount of mosquitoes around. And they had to put mosquito net on our cots, you know, and I'd put 6 posts in drilled holes in the wooden cots and string this mosquito net over top to keep the mosquitoes out, and you had to spray them with a DDT the night before you went into bed, you know. But then you had to get an air raid, and you get out and you run to the foxhole, you know, things like that. But we weren't combat troops, but we were trained to be combat troops. That's some of the things that went on with us. But it was an experience that I don't think if you go through it, you're glad you did it. But the thing is, you were able to survive, and you were fortunate to survive. But how many people that didn't survive? That's the sad part about it. I think about all the fellows that we were with, the different times we had together. Now some had a bulk. They could play ball. They were fortunate to play ball. I was never a good sportsman. I never just pick up sandball. That's all. But some were like diehard sports fellows. They could play softball, and they were really gung ho about playing ball, and they enjoyed that stuff like that. But I never got involved in that because I wasn't that. I figured I was never good at that. And I didn't know that much about it because I was always used to being working. That was my sole project. Work.
And the Navy gave you a work ethic or helped your work ethic today?
I don't know what it is like that today in the Navy.
No, I mean, how did it affect you? How did it create your work ethic?
I was just did what I was told to do, and the things that as I watched what was being done, and as I watched the things that the way they were done, I observed what was going on and how they did it. And I do that the same thing today. If I'm seeing a contractor out there in a road somewhere, I got to watch how he's doing that job. Just see if I can learn something that he did that I don't know. See what he's doing. Now, like the painters and same like that. A fellow we used to come to the house. He was a painter. He gave me a whole layout how to go about starting a paint job, how to clear the paint off and stuff to strip the paint off or to stain and go from there and start from scratch and do that. But he was an excellent painter. But they never got recognition. But because you were up at I don't know why there was no re-rates to give these people. But I see these people with badges of medals on their chests, almost like it's a badge of honor. But the poor lonely guy, the GI, he did all the doggone work. He took all the risk. To me, I think it's totally unfair. That's my own personal opinion. They may have done something, I don't know what they're doing, but I see them with a chest full of medals. And I said to myself, the guys that were beside me and were putting their life on the line every day, and I'm thinking to myself, they should have had medals too, but they weren't giving out rates because the government had no money to put out to make a guy a higher rated seaman or so to pay that much more money. Your life was only worth $10,000 when it comes down to it.
Right, the insurance policy.
Yeah. And then when you came out of the service, you either had to convert that or you had nothing at all. There was no residuals that you continue that on. If you did, you had to pay for that. So which I did, and I only took a portion of it because I didn't know that much about it at the time. So I took a portion of the $10,000 and converted that to a lifetime. And like I said, it was one of them things that they didn't give too much to think, but your life was only worth $10,000. But like I said, these little guys that was on doing all the work, I say they're doing the work. The guys that doing those combat, these that are fighting the front lines, that's the guys that should have the medals, not the guys that sitting back and said, well, we'll send him over here, we'll send him over there. My own personal belief is I don't believe in that. I believe that the guy who was up the front line, he's the guy that did the job. He's the guy that saved my life. He's the guy that saved their lives. That's what I look at. It was a change that I couldn't believe. I got home. I had gone discharged in February '46 from 42. I got home, I couldn't believe the changes that had taken place. The local store that I used to get down to the corner and buy ice cream was gone. The butcher shop was gone. The neighborhood was changed. people I knew had moved on to somewhere else. All these stores that I knew, and the people I had delivered papers to, that was all changed. Streetcar I used to drive, get on the streetcar and sell my newspapers. That was gone. That was changed to buses. And I said to myself, I can't believe this is going on. That's so changed for me. I just couldn't apprehend it, how much it was. I took a week off, went to New York to meet one of my friends that I was in the service with. And he had a chicken farm up there. And he'd go to work. I go down and pick the chickens out of the chicken's nest to his wife. And he hooked me up with a neighbor girl who went down to watch a movie and then came home, and that was it. And like I said, I just, it was so changed, I couldn't get over it. I was so used to living with this family of guys. And you come by, I've lost all them. I come home, I don't know anybody. Everything's changed up here. I'm like in a different world. It's so unique, you know. And I can see these fellas come home today. They live with this family, all these guys around them. They come home. They're by themselves now. They don't have their family anymore. Their family of veterans. They don't have them. And they can't hack it. It's just one of them things that just gets into you. But they got all these modern conveniences today. But in our day, I was so overwhelmed with things like that I couldn't hack it. You know, it just overwhelmed me so much that I couldn't see so many things that changed so much. I just couldn't believe that like the little stores I had known, and the butcher shop, the grocery store I worked in. That was one of the things that's gone.
Joe, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know you were a little apprehensive about what to talk about, but this was fascinating, and I think it was very insightful, and I think a lot of people will appreciate your story. So thank you very much.
Well, it's just one of them things, like I said, you were a family of veterans. And when they leave you or you leave them, you're so lonely. You don't have that anymore. You're by yourself. And you say to yourself, where'd everybody go? I don't have my friends anymore. Even though you got your family, but your family of veterans are gone. Guys you lived with for years. It's just one of them things. It gets to you.